Joining me on IPEM 2017's Web TV studio is FTI Consulting, Stephanie Lhomme and Fergus Wheeler. Fergus Wheeler, you are Senior Managing Director in charge of the Private Equity Strategic Communications business line.
That's right.
And Stephanie, you're Senior Managing Director in charge of Forensic Litigation Consulting. Could you explain what that entails, Forensic Litigation Consulting?
Sure. So it actually encompasses a lot of things on which we assist private equity. So pre-deal, we can assist private equity alongside the whole investment life cycle. Pre-deal, we do due diligence at all levels: financial due diligence, tax due diligence, reputational due diligence, operational, and everything that has to do with compliance, corruption, fraud. And then during the life of the investment, we also assist private equity funds with disputes, post-acquisition, fraud, internal fraud in the portfolio companies, or corruption matters based on forensic investigations techniques.
That broadly presents the whole scope of activities of FTI Consulting, doesn't it?
Pretty much. I didn't mention the communication, but we will, obviously.
Well, actually, when it comes to communications, we're here at IPEM with private equity players. What are the reputational issues private equity firms must be prepared to face and face?
Well, I mean, there are plenty of reputational issues. I mean, as you may have read in the papers many years ago, I think it was a German politician that described the industry as being full of locusts, and that's taken a long time for the industry to recover. There was a book called Barbarians at the Gate about a firm called KKR maybe 20, 30 years ago, and that's traditionally been that sort of US slash and burn model. Is sometimes quite difficult to overcome when you go into an emerging market in particular. So the industry's been working very hard through the trade associations, through communications advisors in general, to sort of overcome that image and to understand that they're about growth, they're about job creation, and in particular they are about making pensioners, pension pots, bigger. So, if you're a teacher in California, or if you're a fireman in Pennsylvania, or a railway worker in Paris, it's your pension that's being grown by the activities of private equity firms.
You mentioned Barbarians at the Gate. That was quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
Do we have more recent examples
of bad practice or good practice?
Well, both actually.
Yes, I mean, look, there are always issues, and I think what private equity firms need to understand, what they do understand very well, is they get a lot of pressure from their LPs, from their investors. And there's certainly examples in the US where a particular firm was going to close a factory down, a clothing company. I'm not going to mention the firm, but they had Hollywood people on the sort of picket line. Samuel L. Jackson's out there saying "Save our factory," and the firm went ahead and decided they were going to close it. It was only when one of their investors said to them, "You know what? We don't want you to close that factory." They said, okay, and they changed their mind. So, LP pressure, I think, is key to how the private equity industry communicates.
And that's where you jump in.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. On your side?
Yeah, I mean, we can add to this, there are some markets outside of the US, in Europe, for example. If you look at France or Germany, where the social environment has had an impact on the private equity reputation. In the past few years, during the financial crisis, private equity were looking for higher returns by restructuring, renegotiating debt, cutting costs, and getting rid of a lot of the workforce. In France, for example, that doesn't go very well, and that has impacted the reputation of private equity quite strongly. Today, private equity money is actually needed because there's a lot of medium-sized, very successful companies in France that actually require additional funding to expand and find growth in other territories, for example. So I think it's important to look at your reputation and how you communicate about what you're doing in the industry.
You just mentioned France, Germany, and United States before. Could you give us an idea of the scope of your activity at FTI Consulting? Where do you serve your clients?
Sure. Well, we've got about 5,000 employees, and we serve clients in 30 different countries. Where we don't have an office specifically, we have affiliate networks in place. So particularly for private equity clients, where they need to come to us, do a piece of M&A in a country where we don't have an office, we have an affiliate network of people who can serve them in those countries. In terms of what we actually do, the segment lines, we've talked about strategic communications. We have a forensic and litigation consulting business. We have an economic consulting business. We obviously have a big corporate finance business, and we have a technology business. Those are the main service lines.
This large network, this broad presence of yours gives you in a way, unique point of view. What's your view of the trends in the industry going on? How do you approach this scene today of private equity, broadly speaking?
So without being an expert anymore in private equity, although I did 15 years of M&A, I see that the valuation and the EBITDA multiples used to be very, very high pre-financial crisis. I think it's, again, very, very high. And a lot of private equity houses have realized they don't want to pay as much anymore. So they're trying to find what we could call niche investment, where they can find a return on investment somewhere else. And I see a lot of these private equity firms refocusing that on mid-cap company, where it's either companies that have a high potential for growth but are poorly managed, or companies that have been successful in their internal markets, whether it's France, Germany, the UK, or even the US, and are trying to expand. So there's higher opportunity for growth and higher return, but it also comes with higher risk. And so again, what we do, the due diligence, whether you look at the market you are entering, the management you are buying, or the company is quite important, as well as the image and the reputation behind that.
The private equity market is growing in France, and it's growing quite significantly. What's your view of the French market?
So I see two trends. Private equity looking into the mid-cap market. We do have in France some very successful mid-cap companies that are looking to expand and find growth, for example, in different territories, different jurisdictions. And the other thing is the startups, quite successful in France, again, trying to develop into sectors such as high-tech or clean energy. We do, on the top of the technical expertise we have, that Fergus mentioned, we also have sectorial expertise. We have energy experts, including renewable experts in France, infrastructure, for example. So that's kind of what I see happening in France at the moment.
Stéphanie Lhomme, Senior Managing Director for Forensic Litigation Consulting, and Fergus Wheeler, Senior Managing Director in charge of Strategic Communications. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.